meriT-V is a randomized trial that randomized a 2-to-1 fashion, so 2 patients for BioMine versus 1 patient for the control arm, which was science. And the whole rationale was to evaluate these patients invasively after 6 months to understand the efficacy of this novel device. So BioMime is really a next generation DS that composes a very interesting platform with this so-called hybrid design. So hybrid design will have closed cells at the edges and open cells in the middle. So it facilitates the access to side branches in the middle, and it protects the edges against injury when you post-dilate or when you deploy the stent. It has a bioabsorbable polymer that releases sirolimus. I'm very excited about this new device because first, it has some interesting features that can really enhance safety. Having a bioresorbable polymer on the top of the metallic scaffold can really release the drug in the early months after deployment, and then potentially we're not going to need the protection with dual antiplatelet therapy. We know that when we give DAPT for a prolonged period of time, we can expose our patients to bleeding. So to enhance the safety profile, I think to have an ultra-thin stent such as BioMine releasing sirolimus, which is a limus drug, to the vessel wall, and the polymer goes away a few months after the deployment, can really be an interesting characteristics in terms of safety. We use BioMime for quite some time, but I think that the body of evidence is still not completely there yet. So I think that for people to feel more comfortable to use this new technology, we need to generate data. And I think to randomize against the best-in-class stent, which is considered to be one of the most used stents in the world, I think it was very bold from Meril Life Science to, again, generate data and compare with the current technology. We're bringing these patients back at 6 months for an invasive evaluation. So we're going to do angiography, and there is a specific methodology to measure the late loss. So based on QCA, we learn if BioMime, which is the more recent technology, is non-inferior to science in terms of late loss. We're going to release the results by the end of the year, probably during TCT, which will happen in Denver by the end of October. I think meriT-V will be an important study to, again, prove the long-term efficacy of this novel technology of BioMime, which is an ultra-thin metallic stent with bioabsorbable polymer. And the combination of this long-term efficacy, which is low late loss, with the potential advantage of safety, can make this device very competitive. We do deal with very complex patients, very diffuse disease and long lesions, and sometimes you have to use 2 or 3 devices. So it makes the procedure more complicated and sometimes more expensive. So the so-called BioMine Morp has the ability to treat very long lesions with tapered vessel. For instance, we generally have a smaller vessel at the end, 2 to 5, and a large vessel at the proximal segment. So having this device that will accommodate these very long anatomies, having, for instance, 3-3-5 at the proximal wedge and 2-5-3-0 at the distal, it's really an interesting solution for this long lesion, and we can treat with only 1 stent. Let me spend just a few seconds to explain the MeRes scaffold, which is really a next generation bioresorbable scaffold that has some very interesting features. First of all, it's ultra thin, it's 100 micron, compared to the first generation Absorb, which is 150. It gets totally absorbed from the body between 2 to 3 years, so it's a little bit shorter absorption than the first generation. It also has the same platform as BioMime in terms of its design, because it has this hybrid design with open cells in the middle and closed cells at the edges. Also, another differentiating feature is to have 3 radiopaque markers at the edges, so it really gives us a more precise deployment technique. So, being said that, of course, we need to have a clinical program. So we are talking about 2 studies to start with. The typical first-in-man, which was 108 patients with clinical endpoints, but also a subset of patients that came back at 6 months for an invasive evaluation. So close to 40 patients came back for an angiographic evaluation at 6 months with very impressive efficacy. Late loss was only 0.15 millimeters at the end of 6 months. So I think that we could prove efficacy in this early first phase 1 study. The MeRes-1 study included already 64 patients in multiple countries, in Europe and South America. We are at the very end phase of inclusion, and we think that by the end of the year, also for TCT, we're going to be able to present the final results. I think the uniqueness about this study is that we are collecting a lot of invasive, multiple imaging modalities in this particular study. So you're going to learn a lot about the mechanism of a failure or efficacy after 6 months of bringing most of these patients back, not only for angiography, but also with OCT. I'm very excited because this really represents next generation BRS technology. I think with all the features that I already mentioned, I expect to see the same efficacy that we saw with the first-in-man, which was a very robust study with more than 100 patients. But also we're gonna really understand the dynamics of this novel device inside the coronary artery. So you understand if the vessel will relax and the stent will follow. So we understand if we're going to prevent recoil, we understand the biological effect of sirolimus to the vessel wall, and then essentially after a few months, or in this case in 2 to 3 years, it's going to go away. So there will be a lot of insights from this imaging study that we will collect. So I think with the lessons we learned with the first generation devices, that we have to learn how to select better our patients for these new technologies, apply good technique of deployment, the so-called PSP. We prepare the vessel, we deploy following the rules, we post-dilate to optimize the result. With these novel technologies, with thinner struts, shorter time for absorption, more tolerant for post-dilatation, I think the combination of all these factors will really represent a bright future.